My name is Megan, and I am one of the popular materials librarians at the Clinton-Macomb Public Library. We do a lot of programming there, and one of the things that I sometimes do is craft programs. And in the last year, I had done a lot of pom-pom programs. And I thought today from home, I would show you some things that you can make with yarn pom-poms. And I will warn you that they are addicting. Once you start making pom-poms, you won't want to stop. At least I didn't. So the first thing is how to make a pom-pom and what will you need. To make pom-poms, you will need yarn. If you have some yarn lying around at home, you'll need yarn. You'll need a pair of scissors, preferably sharp scissors. And you will need something to make your pom-pom with. There are some great videos on the internet on how to make a pom-pom maker, how to use pom-pom makers, like name brand Clover or Boy pom-pom makers. And there's actually a great video on Creative Bug if you want to try out our new crafting database. Creative Bug has a video on how to make pom-poms with pom-pom makers, how to make your own, and how to use a fork for tiny ones. But if I'm not using a pom-pom maker, what I actually like to use is a toilet paper roll. So if you have a toilet paper roll lying around, that'll work too. So those are what we need to get started with making pom-poms. I'm going to show you 3 different projects, and each uses multiple pom-poms. So you'll want to sort of collect what you need to make pom-poms before you get started with this. So I'm going to get started on making the pom-pom. So I've got my toilet paper roll, and I'm going to smash it flat so that it's basically just a rectangle of cardboard. You can use a cereal box or anything that is going to not squish when you wrap it, because we're going to wrap this with yarn. You see, I've got 2 skeins of yarn here because I'm going to make a multicolored pom-pom. If you want a single colored pom-pom, you use 1 skein of yarn. If you want multiple colors, you can use multiple colors. And I want multiple colors. So I'm going to use both my skeins of yarn at once. And I have my purple and I have my variegated. And I'm going to take them and I'm just going to wrap it around. I'm going to wrap it around until it's pretty thick. I'm going to keep going. See, it's pretty thick on both sides, but I'm going to do a few more. The more yarn you put into it, the more fluffy it will be. But you do need to be able to tie it. So you don't want to make it so thick that you can't get a good snug tie around the middle of it. So I went around, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 times with two strands of yarn, maybe 30. And you see it looks pretty thick on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and call that good. And I'm just going to snip the ends. The next thing I need to do is to use a little bit of yarn to tie off. So I'm going to get my purple yarn here and I'm going to make a pretty long tie because depending on what I want to use this pom-pom for, I might need the ends of it to tie the pom-pom to something. So I'm still on the toilet paper roll. I'm still holding the end there, and I'm going to pull this whole thing very carefully off of the cardboard. I've got my yarn at the ready because when I pull this off, I'm going to hold it in my hand, squishing it. I'm going to take this yarn and wrap it right around the middle. So like giving this bundle of yarn a belt right around the middle. Let's see. And then I'm going to tie it tight. I'm putting it down on the table. And there, tying it tight, tight, tight. And I'm going to give it a knot. And then if I can, I'm going to go right around again, just to be sure. So see, I'm opening right there. I'm going to tie it again on the other side. So tight, pull. Do be careful because sometimes you can break the yarn that you're tying it off with, and you don't want to do that. So snugly, but I guess don't yank it so hard that you break the yarn because that's a bummer. Okay, so now my little yarn bundle has a little belt, and I am going to set about cutting the loops that have formed on each side of the belt. So there's a little belt. I'm going to snip these loops. And I'm just going to go right in and take my scissors, cut the loops. All right, I think I got them all on that side. I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to cut the loops on this side. And it doesn't look like much yet. I'm going to check to see that I got all the loops. I don't see any. Oh, I found one. I'm going to snip these couple ones. And then as I fluff it, you can see it starts to look like a pom-pom. One thing about using this method of a rectangle of cardboard is that you do need to trim up your pom-pom to make it into more of a ball shape. So I'm going to do that next. If you have a pom-pom maker, that is one of the benefits of having a pom-pom maker. They come out very round, whereas using the rectangle, you do have to do a fair amount of trimming. So I'm going to keep just kind of rotating. Oh, no, that's not a loop. I thought I found a loop, but I didn't. As I'm doing this trimming, I'm holding on to those long ties, that belt that went around the middle of the pom-pom. That way, I can hold on to it and kind of rotate it. Just keep spinning. And if you want, you can give it another little fluff. Kind of see how it looks, which ones are sticking up weird. Around the bottom. And that's the gist of it. And if you keep going, you will make your pom-poms smaller. If you want a larger or a smaller pom-pom, you just use different sizes of cardboard if that's what you've got. They sell pom-pom makers in different sizes, but using a different size of cardboard will give you a different pom-pom. And I think this pom-pom looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and call it good. Oh no, there's one on top there. But for our projects, I've actually pre-made some pom-poms, so you don't have to watch me make them all. This pom-pom trimming can get kind of messy, so it's good to have a trash can nearby to sweep up your ends into. Let's see if you can see that there. That's my little pile of yarn ends. Oops. There we go. Okay, but for our projects, the first one that we are going to do requires 3 pom-poms, preferably in different sizes, but it's not necessary, and it is a pom-pom door hanger or a pom-pom garland. This is a decoration, a hanger that we did at many of the senior residences that I visit, and I've got one hanging on my book cart at the library, and we made this one at home the other day, and I've got some prepped for you. So you can see you'll need pom-poms in 3 different sizes, preferably, but it's not a big deal. You can do them all the same size, big, little, and littler, and then a tassel at the end, and I'll show you how to make the tassel. So I have some pom-poms that I already made. I've got purple, purple, I've got a blue, and I've got a pink, different colors. The next thing that you will need is some yarn to be the center. And this project is actually an idea that we got off of a website called Design Sponge, which I really like, but is no longer being updated. If you want a photo tutorial for this project, there's a very good one at Design Sponge, but it's going to be sort of going, it's no longer maintained. So you can search Design Sponge as of spring 2020, but you may not be able to later in the future. So for my center piece, I want, as long as you are going to want your garland to hang down, I'm going to cut it fairly long because I can always make it shorter, can't make it longer. So I've got a piece of yarn, a fairly long piece of yarn, and I usually just use one strand of yarn for the center, and I'm going to make it from the top down. So the first thing I'm going to do is just fold the yarn in half to make the hanger where you can slide this onto a doorknob or a wreath hanger or whatever you want to, however you want to display it, a curtain rod. So I'm going to just take the two ends and tie a knot, pull that loop through so that we've got a loop. And there's the loop and then the rest of the yarn. Next, we're going to string the 3 pom-poms onto that center piece. And for this, you will need a yarn needle. It is a thick, not very pointy needle for weaving in ends of yarn. And you're going to take the end of your center piece for your hanger and put it right through the yarn needle. I pinch the end to get the yarn needle threaded, but another good technique, because sometimes this can be difficult, is to fold the yarn so that it doesn't fray. So if you folded the end and then you try to slide that folded part in, the yarn doesn't fray and break apart, so you can pull it through that way. Okay, so now we've got our yarn needle threaded onto our center piece. And I'm going to make it from the top to the bottom. So I'm going to start with my largest pom-pom. For me, that's my purple. And I'm going to try to feel for the middle. This can be one of the hardest parts, to try to get it centered properly onto here, because otherwise it'll sort of wiggle, which isn't the end of the world, but still, it's nice if it's centered. I still have my ends on here. I'm not going to need them to tie to anything. So I'm going to use that as the idea of where the center of this should be. So I'm going to kind of just feel and eyeball and use those ends. I'm going to push the yarn needle right through where I think the center of this pom-pom is. And as I go, I'm going to look at it from this side too. I'm going to fluff it and say, does that look right? It looks pretty good. I'm just going to pull it all the way through to where my loop is and my the knot that I made for that loop. Now, you can put a knot here, but I have found that the pom-poms don't really slide around a lot. If you have a cat, the cat will definitely claw at this and you may want to put a knot, but I think you're okay without it. You may maybe just put a drop of hot glue or Elmer's glue on here when you're done, but I don't worry about a whole lot because they really don't move around very much once they're on here, in my experience. So I've got this pushed all the way to the top. Now I'm ready for my middle size ball of yarn, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to kind of use this to see where the center is, and I'm going to push, I'm going to eyeball it when it comes out the other side, and that it looks a little off to me, so I'm going to pull it back out. Just kind of feel for the middle. That looks a little better. All right, fluffy. And I'm gonna pull it on to the yarn. Gonna lift it up to check my spacing, because in the example, they're not right next to each other. There's a little bit of space there. And so I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it to see. It's a few inches. Let's see, that looks pretty good. Now I'm on to my third and my smallest pom-pom. Exact same thing. I'm gonna kind of feel for the middle, eyeball it as I go through. It's tight. See, that looks pretty good. Push it on and then see if they're about even on there. That looks pretty good. I'll push this up just a little bit. All right. Now, the last thing that we need to make is the tassel for the bottom. How to make the tassel? Well, I'm going to make my tassel in green, the same color as my center string. And there are tassel makers you can buy as well. But for making a tassel, I like to use a DVD case. So I'm going to take my DVD case and I'm going to take the color of yarn that I want to make my tassel, and I'm going to start wrapping. And for this tassel, I think I went around about 18 times. So I'm going to do the same thing again. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 18, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so now DVD case is wrapped. Straighten it out. Cut the yarn. Now I just have this. I'm going to set this aside for now. I'm going to make the little wrap part of the tassel. You can see this is a contrast color. I'm going to make it the same purple as my top pom-pom. So I'm going to take some of this purple and have that ready to wrap. But before I wrap, I'm going to cut the bottom of the tassel. And with the DVD case, you can put your scissors kind of right into that groove and get a fairly even cut. But I'm still pinching it so that it doesn't come off the case, so that it doesn't get loose. I forgot. You also need a little bit of yarn to tie off the top. So I have the same color, just a small piece. I'm gonna pull this up right at the center. I'm gonna take a little bit of yarn and thread it through that center there. And I'm going to tie a knot in what will be the top of the tassel. Not too tight, because I don't want it to be too squinched. A double knot. I'm going to flip it over so that the knot is underneath. And now I am ready to do the wrapping to keep the tassel together. And like I said, I'm going to use a contrast yarn color. So I'm kind of holding on to the tassel, and I'm going to drape this yarn over and just wrap it around a few times. Kind of pick it up, see if it looks even, which I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to scoot it up a little more. That looks pretty good. So then I'm going to tie this into a knot. The knot will be on the outside for now, but then we'll hide these end pieces in just a minute. So I'm just tying a knot. And tie another knot. Just adjust it a little bit. And then when I'm finished, I'll use the yarn needle to hide these extra pieces. This is my last step to make my garland. So I've got my 3 pom-poms. I'm going to take the yarn needle and centerpiece and go right through the top sort of hole in the tassel. And then I'm going to check to see if it's at, if the spacing is how I like it. So I'm gonna hold it up. It's falling too far. Still down too far. If you have a buddy at this point to hold it for you, that's helpful. I'm gonna scoot it up a little bit. But that looks pretty even, so I'm gonna pinch it. And then I'm going to, so I'm holding on so that the tassel doesn't move while I let go of the top. So pinched it where I want it, and I'm going to go, so I'm holding it upside down so that it can't move. I'm going to go around that center piece and through to make a knot right on top. Let's see. We'll do one more. I'm going to go around. Got the hole for the knot there, and then thread it right through that hole so that the knot ends right on top of the tassel. And then I'm going to take the rest of this extra yarn that I don't need anymore, and I'm going to feed it right down through the center of the tassel so that it's hidden. So you can see the knot on top, but this, when I cut it, it's just going to blend right into the tassel. Now I do need to hide these ends of my contrast color. I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm just going to go into the center of the tassel again. And with the other end, just going to slide it down into the middle. Pull it tight. And these purple pieces, I'm going to find and cut those off fairly short so that you can't see them. Oops. And then I'm going to trim up the very bottom of the tassel. I'm going to cut off these ends where the pom-poms were tied off. You can do that before you make this. You don't really need them for any part of this. You don't use those ends to tie off your pom-pom. You're only threading them onto that center, this center piece of yarn, so you don't need those. You can cut them off when you're trimming your pom-pom for this project. There's ends for there. Last, I'm gonna trim up this little end where I tied the knot on top. You can't see it. It's hidden inside the pom-pom, so you don't have to cut it super short. And there is our first pom-pom project. A little decoration, door hanger.